Hello, my dear friends and loyal followers, welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Before we dive in, if you're new here, tap subscribe so you don't miss any updates. I'm sending you all a big hug. Now take a deep breath and come with me into a night Rome will never forget. Just before dawn, the city felt held under glass, no birdsong, no morning traffic, only the electric stillness of a crowd that didn't dare move. Outside San Camillo Hospital, cameras perched on shoulders like restless birds, cords coiled across the pavement, and fans stood praying with clasped hands and wet faces. Then at 5:47 a.m., the silence fractured. A man stepped forward, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness, his fingers trembling as if they no longer knew their own strength. It was Urkin, one of Turkey's beloved leading men, a figure who usually lit red carpets and sets with the kind of smile that eases a room. That smile had vanished. In its place was a man stripped to the truth. His voice shook as he faced the microphones, the kind of tremor that makes even the coldest hearts lean in. If anything happens to my Hazal or to our baby, he paused, swallowing against the gravity of the words. I don't know how I keep breathing after that. The line of cameras lowered. Reporters who'd rehearsed a dozen sharp questions forgot them all. People cried without trying to hide it. Hazal Sabesai was 28 weeks into pregnancy. Until that night, everything around them had felt blessed. Erkan had slowed a tight filming schedule in Rome just to hover near her, to bring her tea with honey, to talk to their child through the soft fabric of her dresses as if sound could build a cradle. They laughed about names and made secret promises about the future, whispering that they wouldn't take a second of it for granted. But at 2:15 a.m. on May 20th, the future slammed into the present. A scream tore through their home. Hazal collapsed by the hallway light, fingers pressed to her abdomen, her face drained of color, the floor blooming red beneath her like a nightmare made of ink. Urkin was on his knees in an instant, calling emergency services with one hand while holding his wife with the other. Stay with me, he murmured, rushing breath over the words. Stay with me, Güzelim. You promised we would do this together. Don't you dare go without us. The sirens arrived like a thread through the dark, and he carried her as if she were made of glass. In the ambulance, he pressed his forehead to hers and whispered her name over and over, as if the sound could stitch her pain back together. The corridors of San Camillo swallowed them whole. Hazal was rushed toward an OR, nurses dragging blue curtains across the gap as a doctor shouted for an emergency C-section. The baby was losing oxygen, seconds mattered. Erkan reached for her hand, and for a moment their fingers met, just a heartbeat, before she disappeared beyond the swinging doors. His voice burst from him, raw and fierce, echoing down the sterile hallways, please. It's too early, don't take them from me. No one in the waiting area looked away. Even the hospital clock seemed to tick louder. A nurse tried to steady him, and still he folded to the floor, elbows on his knees, hands over his hair as if holding himself together by force. He whispered a single sentence again and again, as if anchoring his soul to it, if they're gone, I'm gone. The words weren't for any camera, they were for the floor, for the fluorescent lights, for whatever power in the world might be listening. At 5:47 a.m., as the surgical team moved deeper into the operation, Erkan stepped outside to the crowd that had grown by the minute. He was wearing a gray t-shirt, a dark stain blooming across the chest where he had held Hazal. His face looked carved from worry. He leaned into the microphones, eyes fixed on the hospital doors, as if he might see through them by force of will. My wife, he said, voice soft and broken. The center of everything for me. And the little one she carries, our miracle we didn't even know we could deserve. They're fighting right now. If I lose them, I won't know how to keep living. I mean that with everything in me. Inside, the steady rhythm of monitors told a different story. A heart that faltered. For a stretch that lasted 40 long seconds, Hazal's heart stopped. The medical team moved fast, compressions, lines, breath after breath forced back into her body. They brought her back from the edge, fighting for her like she was one of their own. When word drifted out to Urkin that her heart had paused, he broke. He slid down a wall, hands to his face, shoulders shaking, then stumbled back to his feet as if refusing to accept gravity. "Don't make me wait," he begged a doctor through a half-open door. "Please, let me near her. Don't leave my wife alone." Meanwhile, the world moved toward them like a tide. Social media bloomed with messages as the hashtag Hazal lit up feeds across countries and time zones. Fans posted prayers and candlelit photos, adding their names to a digital vigil. Colleagues in the industry shared their voices too. Karim Burson wrote that Urkin's pain cracked all our hearts and that he was praying for strength for Hazal. Neslihan Atagal said that a woman's courage at the threshold of motherhood is a holy force. Engin Akurek added that Hazal is a fighter and that they'd hold space until she and the baby returned to them. 3 hours stretched like an entire lifetime. Finally, a collective inhale rippled through the hallway as a nurse appeared with careful eyes. A baby had been born. Tiny, lungs not ready for the world, but alive. He was whisked to the neonatal intensive care unit, placed into an incubator where warm air and careful hands would carry him through each minute. Hazal's condition was described as critical but stable. The words didn't solve anything, but they held a kind of promise. Erkan returned to the press with a voice that felt steadier at the edges. "Our son is here," he said, eyes shining with a tired kind of hope. "And Hazal is still with us. The fight isn't over, we're just at the beginning. Keep us in your prayers. They are my heartbeat, if theirs keep going, mine will too." Later, when the NICU allowed him a quiet minute, he leaned over the incubator and watched his child. The baby was small enough to fit into 2 hands, a tangle of tubes and tape and stubborn life. Urkin's palm hovered just above the glass. "Your name is Umut," he whispered. "Because your mother waited for you with every beat she had, and because I promised her I would build a world where you could breathe easy. We're going to raise you together. Always together." He wrote the name on a sticky note and pressed it to the incubator's edge like a private flag. Then he sat with Hazal, allowed 15 minutes that disappeared in half that time. He read to her. Not a speech, just a poem they loved, about the sea and the steadfastness of people who keep rowing no matter the weather. He told her what the monitors said, that the baby's oxygen was holding, that the doctors had a plan, that she didn't have to carry this alone. "I'm here," he said, his voice barely more than breath. "I won't leave the doorway until we walk out of it together." Night after night, he planted himself near the sliding doors of the hospital, on a bench that remembered him. He watched ambulances come and go, watched the stars vanish behind thin morning clouds, and every night he spoke the same wish into the cool air: "Soon we sit here, the 3 of us, your mother, you, and me. We'll watch the sun rise and argue about breakfast. We'll talk about nonsense. We'll just be." The chief physician at San Camilo, Professor Alessander Ferri, held a brief press conference that felt like the first light cracking a storm. "Mr. Merrick's presence has had a tangible effect on his wife's recovery," she said, hands folded calmly, a faint smile reaching her eyes at last. "Postoperative risks are receding. Their son's lungs are responding to therapy and look a little better each day. We are not declaring victory, but the horizon looks kinder." Inside, that kinder horizon took shape in small moments: a steadier line on a monitor, a nurse who eased a tube, a doctor who adjusted a setting and nodded to himself. Urkin learned the pattern of the incubator's hum and could tell when Umut's breath had a new rhythm. He knew which chair didn't squeak. He counted the tiles on the ceiling above Hazal's bed, as if memorizing the map of where they'd been would guarantee they'd never return. When messages flooded in, he had someone read them aloud in the hallway, letting their warmth gather like a blanket around the cold edges of the night. A fan from Izmir sent a voice note about watching Hazal's first commercial and believing even then that she would glow forever. A viewer from Rome left tea outside the hospital doors with a note that said, "For the long hours when the hands on the clock forget how to move." A stylist who'd worked with them both sent a scarf and wrote, "Wrap hope around your throat and don't let go." Urkin visited the chapel on the ground floor. Even though he wasn't the chapel type, he lit a candle anyway. He made deals with the candlelight, the kind you don't tell anyone about, promises about being gentler with the world if the world would be gentle back. He called his mother and didn't try to sound brave. He told Hazal's family every update, refusing to allow speculation to nest in the gaps. The morning after the surgery, Hazal squeezed his finger. Just a twitch, a flutter, but it shot through him like sunrise. "I'm here," he said again, the words now a ritual. "Your son is here. We're waiting for you to wake up so we can start the rest of our lives." When her lashes moved and he saw the trace of her eyes beneath, he laughed without making a sound, because laughter at moments like this feels like spilling a secret. He sat by the incubator and told Umut about Rome, the fountains, the pigeons, the pastry shop where his mother had insisted on too many sweets. He explained, softly, that coming early didn't make him incomplete. "You're just impatient," he teased. "You couldn't wait to meet your mother." A nurse smiled and said he should keep talking, that babies listen to the cadence of their parents' voices, that it anchors them to the world. Back outside, the reporters learned not to shout questions. They kept their distance, gave him space, and turned their lenses toward the people holding candles and paper cups of coffee, toward the faces that looked like one large, beating heart. Stories poured out about what Hazal's performances had meant, about Urkin's quiet kindness on sets, about the way they had both given without fanfare. It felt like the city, and beyond it the world, held its breath for two people and the tiny life they had brought into it a little sooner than planned. Days that could have shattered them began to stitch together. The ventilator settings for Umut went down a notch. Hazal's blood markers inched the right way. Urkin learned to smile in standing waves. It came and went, never quite reaching his eyes, but arriving more often, promising the real thing was on its way. He talked to their son about football teams and bedtime stories. He told Hazal about the sunrise she would see from her bed if she turned her head a little to the left. Professor Ferry returned with updates that swelled the crowd's chests. "The risk of losing Miss Sabasai is largely behind us," she announced one afternoon. "And the baby is showing us he likes this world after all. We will keep fighting for them, but we are finally allowed to hope loudly." The word hope circled back to the sticky note on the incubator, to the name whispered in a father's voice, to the reason a man in a gray shirt kept standing up when sitting would have been simpler. People won't forget what Erkan said that first morning, when his heart had been pulled out of his chest and placed on display. That if his wife and child were taken from him, he didn't see a path forward. It wasn't theatrics. It was the bare, unguarded truth. And in saying it, out loud, in front of thousands, he gave everyone permission to love out loud too, to flood a hospital's steps with prayer and patience and a belief that sometimes, when you hold a door open long enough, the people you're waiting for will walk through. We've come to the end of our story for today. If you want the very latest as Hazal and little Umut grow stronger and Urkin keeps vigil with that stubborn light in his eyes, make sure you're subscribed to Turkish Spotlight Secrets and tap the notification bell so you won't miss a heartbeat of this journey. Thank you for being here, for listening, for caring so loudly. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video with more news and, I hope, more good days than bad.